Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of Talk to Our Expert series. I'm David Breslauer. Today, we're going to be talking about Merlin icons. That's easier to say. So we're going to talk about icons in Merlin and how to set that up. And without further ado, just some guidelines. We're going to make this short and sweet. It'll be less than 30 minutes. I can tell you that already. I am recording this session, so you can go back and review it at any time. It will be a short presentation. Please ask your questions in the chat window. I'll be happy to answer them. They do not have to be related to today's topic. So if you've got other questions about Merlin or digital asset management, or you have suggestions for topics in the future, please let me know. Please type them into the chat window or drop me an email. I'm happy to respond either way. So we're going to talk about color codes. Many of you may be familiar with color codes. We've had those for quite some time. We're going to talk about badges because that's a new feature in the latest version of Merlin that we've started to roll out. We've got other icons that are configurable as well. And we're going to talk about configuring the hover text. And so before I dig in too deeply, I'm just going to show you a screenshot of what we're talking about here. So here's an example of 3 different photos, and notice in the upper right-hand corner of each photo, I've got an icon that reflects something. In this case, it reflects the value in the credit field. So the first photo on the left is an AP photo. The middle photo is a Getty photo. You can see the Getty icon here. And the third photo is my photo. It's got my name in the credit field, and so I created an icon with my initials. These icons are customizable. You can create your own icons and set them up to match to anything you wanted them to be. So for example, you could set up, if you've got a bunch of photographers on staff, you could set up the icons to match to your photographer's byline, or you could set up the icons to match to the credit field. So just as I've done in this particular case. In the case of the hover text, that is now configurable. So that's the box that appears when you roll over an item in the gallery or grid view. And you can see I've got some icons at the top that indicates whether the item is protected or not, whether it's been reviewed or approved or not, whether it's got a history or other information. And so again, you control the icons that appear at the top. You can also control the legend that appears below it. So for example, I included the fact that the creator and the rights and the source and the approved all show up down there. And so you can control that. And so I'm going to spend a little time showing you how we set this up. So if there are any questions, this would be a good time to ask them. Otherwise, I'm going to get out of this. I don't see any questions so far, so let's do this. I'm going to launch my web browser. I'm already logged in, and I'm logged in to the same 3 images I was looking at before, just for some continuity. And what I'm going to do as an admin user, I'm going to go to my options area and choose administration from my list of options up here. And you can see I've got a new item here called badge config. Well, before we talk about badge config, let's talk about color codes, okay? And so just as a refresher, I've got these color codes displayed under here, and let's take a look at this picture of House on Fire. Notice the creator is my name, and the rights usage term is a orange triangle, and that's because it says one-time use. And the source has my name in the source field, so that's why it's got a pink or magenta diamond, and the approved box is set to false, which is why it's got a red square in there. So again, let's go back to the administration and let's go click on color codes, and you can see these are the 4 fields that I have mapped to the 4 shapes that are available in color codes. This is configurable. It doesn't have to be these 4 fields. It can be any field that you like. So in this particular case, I've got the creator field set here, and the rights usage terms set, and the approved field set, and the source field set. So let's just pick one of them as an example. Okay, so for example, if it sees my name in the creator field, it's going to put a green circle. If it was going to see Roy's name, so Roy, I'm going to add your name because it just popped into my head. If it sees Roy's name, we could make it display one of these other colors. And so for Roy, maybe we're going to make Roy be this pretty turquoise color. Okay, and all I have to do is down at the bottom, click Save Settings. Okay, and it will now display a turquoise circle if Roy's name is found in the byline or creator field. Okay, now these settings are the default settings. That means it applies to all of my users, but I can also set it up so that different classes of users have different color codes. Personally, I would find that a little bit confusing to know that I have one set of color codes and the person sitting across from me, because they work in a different department, might have a different set of color codes, but keep in mind it is something that is possible. So here's my rights usage terms, and so I've set it so that if it says restricted, it puts a red triangle. If it says approved, it puts a green triangle. If it says do not use, it puts it uses red again. And if it says one-time use, it puts an orange triangle. So again, you can control the values that are here and control the colors that are associated with it. Approved is a little bit differently. That's a checkbox field, which means it's either true or false, yes or no. And so if you're going to set up the checkbox field, you do it like this. Do a .f for false and .t for true. And so I set it up so that if it's true, it puts a red square, and if it's false, it puts a green square. So again, you can set this up the way you want it to be. And then same thing for my source field. If it says Associated Press, it puts this green diamond. If it says my name, it puts a magenta diamond in it. So that's pretty straightforward. And again, once I set this up, I click Save Settings, and my settings get saved to the server. And typically I have to log out and log back in to see my settings take place. So that's an important thing to remember. Log out and log back in whenever you make some changes like this to ensure that you see them the way that you've configured them. So this is a review about color codes. Okay, so that's a little bit about color codes. Let's talk about badge configuration. Okay, again, just like color codes, you can set it up so that it's the default behavior for everybody, but you can also set it up so that it's different for a different class of users. So if I belonged to the group Merlin Photo, my color codes and my badges would be different, would override whatever the defaults are. Okay, but this is to set up the defaults. So I can set it up so that my star ratings are on the left, or my badges are on the left, or my stars are on the right. So you can choose which side the stars are on and which side the badges are on. There are some default badges that you cannot change, okay? You can hide them. If you don't want them to be viewable by your users, you can hide them. Let's go back to this and hover over it. So again, these would be the badges that appear at the very, very top of my hover text, okay? Or appear at the top of my image. So for example, linking and things like that. So let's go back. Okay, so if something is linked, I've got a linking badge that appears. If it's been versioned, I got a versioning badge. If it's been commented on, I get a commenting icon. So let's go back and turn all of those badges on so you can see them. So here, I'm going to take these two items and I am going to link them together. Okay, so you can see that the linking badge has appeared. Now, you can hide the linking badge from your users, okay? Let's do something else. Let's add a comment. This is a new feature in this version of Merlin. So I'm going to add a comment to that, and that's going to turn the commenting icon red in the metadata panel for that selected item. And it's also going to add the commenting icon up here with the rest of my badges. Okay, and let's go see what else we have to add in there. Versioning. Yeah, so if I version something, I get the little versioning icon that appears there as well. And you can see I added the credit field, okay? So that if you add the credit field, here's what I've done. I've said that if the value is AP or the value is Associated Press, it's either one of those, to use an icon file called ap.png. Okay, so if you want to use a custom icon file, you need to provide us with the icon files, and they can be any file format, PNG, JPEGs, GIFs, whatever you want, and provide them to us, and we'll get them uploaded to your servers. Or you can use any of these built-in fonts as icons as well. So I could use the Android icon, so you can see it right here. This is the Android icon. Or if I want it to be the Angie's List icon, or I guess that's the Angel List icon, and the Angle Right icon. So again, I can choose any of these fonts to show up and use those instead of the icons that I've custom applied. So I've got a choice of icons. I can use these default icons that are built in, or you can supply custom icons, okay? And so that's a pretty nice thing to be able to do. And these custom icons can be used in other places as well, and let me show you, okay? So here, this next area, this controls what appears in the gallery hover area. Okay, so that's different than the badging that appears on the photo. So the badging that appears on the photo appears to these badges in the upper right hand corner. The gallery hover applies to this information at the bottom, where you can see, for example, I've got a protected icon, and I've got a history icon, and I've got a librarian checked icon, and I have a rights icon. That would be the key icon. So I've got all of these icons. So let's go back to administration. And so if you don't want the protected icon to appear there because you're not using it, you can just remove it, and it will no longer appear in the hover text. If you want to remove the rights icon, you can remove the rights icon. And notice when I click on these are presets. You cannot change these. These are built in. Okay, if you want the tracks icon to appear, if there's something in the tracks ID field, you can set up an icon for tracks to appear. If you want to set up an icon for the rights usage terms, notice I've said if it's one-time use, to use the exclamation that's in a circle. If it's mandatory credit, use the same thing, okay? If it's not empty, in other words, if there's anything in that field, I want you to put a triangle with an exclamation point in it to indicate that there's something in that field. Maybe you should pay attention to it, okay? So that's a little bit about those icons. The reserved feature, again, you can turn off the reserved feature if you don't want to see it. Reserved is new to this version of the web client. It allows a user to basically call dibs on something. I saw it first, and you can use it, but you're going to have to legally steal it in order to use that. Okay, so you can see how these things have been set up. If something has been set to true in my consent given field, it puts a checkbox that's inside the square. And again, I picked that from the selection of these font awesome fonts that I set up here. Okay, and then when you're done, once you have this set up the way you want it to be set up, you can change the settings over here on the left-hand side. And if you want to work on these settings, you have to save them first, and then you can save your badge matches on the right-hand side. So since I didn't make any changes, or the few changes I did make, I'm going to ignore, so I'm not going to worry about that. So any questions about color configuration and setting up badges and things like that? Okay. I don't hear any questions. Those are the things I wanted to talk to you about. Wow, this may be the shortest chat with an expert. I'm going to give it a second or two and see if you have any other questions you'd like to talk about. The reserve tool, and you mentioned it was new to Merlin. Okay, so the reserved icon, for those of you that have used Merlin for a long time and have used the old rich client, which is still current, it's still being supported. And so if you reserve something, let me show you how that would work. So let's say I've got this picture of House on Fire that I'd like to reserve, okay? And so up here in my editing tool, I can choose to reserve the item. And just say, I'd like to reserve it until the end of the month, okay? And I'm going to apply that. And so this item is now reserved, okay? And notice in my hover text, at the very, very bottom, it indicates that it's been reserved, and it's been reserved by me. I'm hosted admin until the 30th of this month. On the 30th, the reservation will expire. Now, what does this mean to your other users? Okay, your other users will see the reserved items, and when they try to download a reserved item, they're going to get a message that says, "Hey, this item has been reserved." Um, and in order to use it, you have to change the reservation. So if Melissa, for example, if you wanted to actually use this item over me, you would go in here and into the edit, and you would call up the reserve icon again, and you would change the reservation, or you could say remove all reservations. Okay, and what will happen is the reservation is now removed, and you'll be able to download it. Now, of course, Merlin keeps track of everybody who downloaded something, so the whole reason for doing this is to force you to acknowledge that you're going to use this picture even though someone has reserved it. The reason we do it this way is we know that sometimes things change. And so I might have reserved this picture because I thought I was going to use it in something in 2 weeks, and then I go on vacation, okay, or it's my day off, and something has come up, and maybe the publication date of your newsletter has been moved up the week for some reason, or you're trying to something has changed and you need to get this on your website, and so we're making it so that you can still see the picture and you can still download it, but you're basically acknowledging the fact that I saw it first, but you're going to take it from me, but you notice that I did have it first, and so you could call me if I'm working, for example, and say, hey, can I have this picture, or something like that. So that's the idea behind that. So that's a little bit about reserve. I'm glad we could cover that. Something else that's new in this version of the client, it's a little thing, but I think it will help you a lot. So this is version 5.4. How do I know that? When you park your mouse over the icon in the upper right-hand corner, typically it's the Merlin X icon. When you park your mouse over that, the hover text reads out the version, and you can see this is version 5.4.22.49821. We really call this version 5.4, okay? Anything after 5.4, we're talking about bug fixes and things like that, but it's the 5.4 release, okay? And that's what we're talking about for badges, and that's what we're talking about for reserve, and that's what we're also talking about for this really cool thing I'm going to show you. We've made it so that you can download the manual directly from here. Okay, so if you want to download the manual, you click this link and it will give you the manual that goes with that particular version. So if you're running version 5.4, which is the current version that we're currently rolling out, it will give you the 5.4 manual. If you're running version 5.5, once that's released sometime later in 2017, when you download the manual, you'll get the version that's appropriate for 5.5. Okay, so that's a little bit about downloading the manual. That's a new feature. One other minor thing, you'll notice it right away. We broke the download icon out of the export or share button, okay? We had a lot of users complain that it took too many mouse clicks to get to a download. So we eliminated a few of those mouse clicks by adding the download to the main toolbar area. So if you just click on download, you can choose this, apply download, and oh, here's a bonus, output the images as, and you can convert the file format on output. Okay, so we got into the weeds a little bit here today. Showed you a couple of bonus features that really wasn't part of today's program, but I'm happy to show them to you. Anything else I can talk to you? Will a color wheel? That's a good question about a color wheel palette being available for the color codes. Probably eventually, but this was our kind of our first pass at doing the color codes, and this was an easy way to do it. So I'm making a note of that so we can put it on our things to evaluate as we do development. All right. Anything else? Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening. And again, we'll send out a link to the video so that if you need to watch it or share it with your colleagues, it'll be there for them. It's also will be on our YouTube page. So thank you, everybody. Happy Tuesday, or happy Wednesday, I guess it is. And I look forward to talking to you in April. Thanks, everybody.